The best debate show in town, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GBNews, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers. Tonight, join us over the next hour to find out who has offered to save Britain from tyranny, who's getting into firearms, and who are the latest group to leave X. I'm Simon Evans. Tonight I've got comedians Leo Kearse and Kerry Marks taking you through Tuesday's top stories. This is Headliners. But before tomorrow's news, let's go one last time to tonight's headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Simon, thank you. The top stories. The Home Secretary says the government will make it an offence with professional and criminal sanctions to fail to report or cover up child sexual abuse. Yvette Cooper told the Commons this afternoon the government will be establishing a victims and survivors panel to advise on wider work around the issue. That's as the Prime Minister's defended his position as Director of Public Prosecutions, saying child sexual exploitation is utterly sickening and it was something he had tackled head-on whilst in that role. Sir Keir Starmer also hit back at Elon Musk over his comments on X that claimed safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips is an evil witch and deserved to be in jail. Yvette Cooper told the Commons there's no excuse for anyone not to take such crimes seriously.
10 years ago, 2 reports by Alexis Jay and Louise Casey in Rotherham found that 1,400 children were sexually exploited, raped by multiple perpetrators, trafficked across other towns, abducted, beaten, threatened with guns, even children who had been doused in petrol, girls as young as 11 who were raped. And their reports identified then, a decade ago, a failure to confront Pakistani heritage gangs and, quote, a widespread perception that they should downplay the ethnic dimensions.
In other news, police say a man's body has been recovered from an area of flooding in North Yorkshire. Police believe the man may have entered the water in the last 24 to 48 hours. The man's described as white, in his early 50s to 60s, with short brown hair, and he was wearing a multicoloured knitted jumper. Well, that's as 2 major incidents have been declared and more than 100 people have been rescued as floodwater inundates Lincolnshire and Leicestershire. Yellow warnings for snow and ice are in effect across large parts of the UK as flooding and snow cause delays on the roads and railways and force hundreds of schools to close. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced his resignation. Trudeau has faced growing pressure from inside his governing Liberal Party after a surge in support for the opposition Conservatives in the polls. The 53-year-old steps down after 9 years in office, and he says he'll step down as soon as his party choose a replacement for him. Trudeau says that although he's a fighter, the parliament he's serving is paralysed under his leadership. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome back to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's top stories with 3 comedians. Before we dive in, let's take a look at what Leo and Kerry will be working with on Monday's front page. That should be Tuesday's front pages. Daily Telegraph have Starmer calls for grooming probe are far right. Possible distortion of his words, but not far off. The Guardian, PM condemns Musk for lies and misinformation on abuse cases. The Daily Express, Starmer out of touch on the rape gang scandal. The NHS will spend an extra 2.5 million, send an extra 2.5 million patients to private hospitals in urgent attempt to cut waiting lists. The Metro, X Factor spat hits Starmer. And finally, the Daily Star. You want some ice with that? Well, those are the front pages. Let's have a closer look at those. We'll start with the Tuesday's Express, Leo.
So it says Starmer out of touch on rape gang scandal. And in another headline, bears defecate in the woods. I mean, Starmer has handled this so badly. He said calls for a grooming gang inquiry are far right.
Yeah.
Or far right, as he says it.
He certainly said they were jumping onto a far-right bandwagon, didn't they? That the far-right have created this momentum and that the ordinary politicians are trying to latch onto.
Yeah, I don't really understand why Keir Starmer is trying to do advertising for the far right.
Yeah.
He's making them sound like the only sensible people in the UK. Apparently they're the only people who want an inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. It's an idiotic thing to say. It's reminiscent of how he handled the Southport massacre when he came out and said the people upset about it and angry about it were just expressing far-right thuggery, which was an absolute nonsense. People were furious then and are furious now.
I completely agree. And the weird thing is, he's actually, on the immigration, for instance, he quite deftly turned that back against the Tories and said there'd been an experiment in open borders and it had failed and Labour would now try and mop up that mess. Why has he not done this with the grooming gangs? The Tories have been in power for 14 years, completely and abjectly failed to do what should have been absolutely core to their mission, and instead he's saying, no, we're carrying on with their policy.
I think he's surrounded by left-wing advisors who he's in an echo chamber of his own making. Yeah. And if you look at Yvette Cooper, she handled it much better. You know, she came out and said, no, we need to focus. You know, she acknowledged that the crimes were horrific and they needed to be dealt with, and they're going to focus on protecting girls in the future instead of protecting institutions, which is exactly what needed to be said, exactly what Starmer should have said.
Instead of protecting Jess Phillips. Kerry, you've been dealt the bum hand of having to defend the rape gangs.
I didn't know that's how this works. Really? Yes,
it's an Ofcom regulation. We have to try and keep balanced.
Yvette Cooper has highlighted 1,400 victims just from Rotherham, and you've got to remember these are all multiple victims. It's not just like one crime each. This was happening over and over again. This is horrifying. And what's odd, and I'm just going to throw this out here, at the top of the Daily Express says, we shouldn't be so relaxed about gratuitous violence we observe every day on our screens. So this is such a trivial thing, you know, and it reminds me of the Me Too thing. If you think this was all going on during whilst this huge campaign across social media, that, which was some of it very valid, but still a man used an inappropriate word in a workplace, and meanwhile, thousands, tens of thousands of girls in this country have been through this horror show where they were put in situations that were so endemic in the area that they couldn't even escape from it because they get into a taxi and the same would happen again.
And they wouldn't have starring roles in Hollywood movies at the end of it either, which is, you know, part of the Me Too deal, wasn't it?
Yes, totally. There's no, but also it's just the bandwagon Starmer's talking about is a massive bandwagon then, because there's, you know, to frame this as far-right is so offensive to a large number of people in this country who just want answers. They want to know, and I don't know. I don't know how much of this has been mendacious from people on the right who are trying to make a bigger deal of a thing, whether it's much smaller than it is, or whether it's the biggest scandal we've ever had in this country. And we need to know. We need to know what is really going on. And when Starmer's saying his business about how when he was a public prosecutor, he dealt with it, that's the whole point. He was implicated. Yeah. So if he's totally innocent or not, he does. It's not a case of I'm now Prime Minister, I'm making this decision. It's a case of I was involved in all of this, so therefore he is not the person to be saying whether there should be an inquiry or not.
I think an inquiry to clear his name.
Exactly, that's the point.
That's
he is the person to be calling an inquiry or not, and his ministers can advise him on that. But it would be much more sensible to say, yes, we have nothing to hide. Let's crack on with it. They've made, as far as I can tell, no serious attempt to justify their refusal at this point. They're just kind of going, no, we're not having another inquiry. We've had quite enough inquiries, thank you.
Well, the brushing off the far right is pretty much, as we saw with Brexit and with everything else, it's now this go-to. It's whatever comes up. If we don't want to deal with it, we simply say it's the far right. But you've got to remember also that what's going on with people demanding an inquiry is very interesting. They're not demanding lynchings. No, they're not demanding a massive throw-out of people. They're demanding truth.
It's the single most democratic approach that could consider, and those approaches are there. The famous saying that the criminal law and the police are there to protect the criminal from society. Yeah, I mean that's what people have got to worry about at this point. If they do not implement those protections.
Yeah, and it shows. You know, we talk about how in America they've got rid of their guns, and you know, or in America they've still got the guns, and it's more dangerous. Look what happens when you get rid of your guns. The state isn't there to protect you. The state is there to protect the state.
It's a good question.
gun,
isn't
don't
it?
you?
I wonder.
You want a gun? I can hear it. I can hear that from you.
Well, there's some of the stories you hear about some of these fathers being arrested for trying to save their daughters from these gangs. You think if there were arms involved, I'm sure a few of them would have been used, and then things may have turned out differently.
And I think the more aggressive and brutal a community is, the more the police kowtow to it and speak to the community leaders and, you know, treat it with kid gloves.
Machetes. Anyway, The Guardian, of course, have actually stepped into the breach, Kerry. You have derogated your responsibility to support them.
Why do I keep being put in these positions? So I'm now The Guardian, am I? So...
I suppose they're saying Musk is fanning the flames. We all feel, I think, that he has brought a welcome degree of, like a searchlight has swung onto the issue. Is he now overdoing it or not? Is there any case for that? What would you say?
I don't care. At worst, he's a megalomaniac. Who cares? Whether he's highlighted a thing or not, it's highlighted.
Yeah.
You know, the subject is highlighted. Let's deal with the subject. Let's still talk about the victims. Let's talk about whether there was gross misconduct that went across his country through social services, through the police, through so many different areas that should have been looked at. Let's find out what happened. This concentrating... What it is, to me, is it's concentrating on Musk or Tommy Robinson or so on is irrelevant. If there's a fire in a building and there's someone who's a fantasist shouting the word fire, you can dismiss it. You might think, oh, it's just him being a fan. But when a whole mass of people are shouting fire, you don't say one of them is a fantasist, so let's ignore it all.
Yeah,
that's silly. Right? So whatever you think of Musk, whatever you think of Tommy Robinson and so on, it has now reached a stage of being irrelevant. This is raised, this is a situation, people want answers.
It's been a very popular and infuriating tactic for some years now, though, hasn't it? To try and switch the focus onto whoever's, you know, creating a kerfuffle about it rather than deal with the issues.
Yes,
you know, shooting the messenger. And, you know, all this talk of, far-right people are exploiting it and, you know, far-right people are jumping on this. No, this is actually making people far-right. If, you know, if the establishment won't deal with it, people are going to look for people who are reporting on it, who are covering it, and who are talking about it.
Who radicalised you? Well, it would be the rapists. That would be the people who radicalise you.
Yes.
And in fact, the governments who refuse to deal with it.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of this has come from very heavily left-wing towns and so on, where who are, as you say, moving over because they want to be represented.
To see The Guardian, which used to be, I mean, it started out as the voice of the underclass, the working class, and now it's the voice of the sort of elite chatterati who, you know, have identity politics and sneer at the girls and ignore the girls because they're working class. It's
funny you mention that, because the other half of their front page is one of the icons of the elite chatterati who's been turfed out on his back. Well, he's accepted the pistol, the pearl-handled pistol, hasn't he? Essentially, he's gone called, you know.
So Trudeau has stepped down as Canada's Prime Minister after a decade in power, and I mean, I can't believe he wasn't turfed out sooner. But recently, I mean, the polls in Canada. I mean, he had a snap election. I think it was in 2021 that he sort of scraped in, but the polls recently have seen an absolute wipeout of the Liberal Party. Down to one poll showed them getting 6 seats in the next election, which is, you know, it's nothing.
Really?
Yeah,
that bad?
It's insane. Absolutely insane.
I think he's a kind of demonstration of Canadian politeness, isn't he?
That they the Tory party are going to take 2 elections to get to 6 seats.
We're seeing this around the Western world. You know, we've seen Nicola Sturgeon, Jacinda Ardern, Leo Varadkar, everywhere. These sort of progressive, liberal, virtue signalling leaders are falling.
And in particular, all those names, but in particular Jacinda, of course, post-vax. That was a very divisive issue, which Trudeau really doubled down on, wasn't it? You know?
But also, I think Trudeau's going to have the legacy of Merkel in the same way. He's going to be pulled apart.
Well, no, difference is that Merkel did have some successes.
Definitely,
what appeared to be success during her time.
I mentioned the same way he's not going to get to sit back and look at all the wonderful things he achieved of
Merkel was like
Jews,
Alex
radical
Ferguson,
authoritarianism,
I think, you know, who left Man United and immediately deflated on his departure, whereas Trudeau has watched them go down to the 3rd division on his watch.
Yes.
And he's like, I can walk from here. You know? Yes. I think there's an extraordinary change happening across the American continent. Obviously, Trump is the biggest news, but Millet, who we cover quite a lot on this show as well.
Yes.
There's the Conservative Party look set for a clean sweep, whoever is elected, whoever sort of steps in as the caretaker for Trudeau in the meantime.
Yeah, I can't see people swinging back to the Liberals now that Trudeau's gone.
No, they're not going to find anyone who's going to patch it up at all. And, I don't know whether the rest of South America will fall into line. But it does kind of feel like
a massive change
Britain is the only country after Brexit to make a sudden lurch to the left.
How did we end up? How did we end up?
It's the one thing we didn't want to happen.
We should be the most conservative.
I'd say though, for all the complaints, Starmer did rescue it from a left that was even more weird from the Corbyn left. So
that's true.
At least it's some improvement. But
where is Australia at the moment? I can't remember. I should know this. Is Australia?
So it's got a left wing. But I think they're going to fall at the next election. There's quite a lot of successes for the right wing. I was at Australian CPAC recently, and it's great. The conservative movement there is really like people look, not to say anything about conservatives in the UK, but people over there look rich and happy.
Healthy and happy, and they've got an extraordinarily good lifestyle, haven't they? But they've also got natural resources, which has helped, mineral resources.
We've got North Sea oil.
Oh, we would if we were about to use it,
Yeah, we tax our North Sea oil like we're Venezuela.
Yeah, you're right. They're opal mines. They're the big thing in Australia. No, I think it's all going well for them. And I think it's going to be very interesting the next 10 years. I think we might see politics really like radical, not like an election, but step change.
Be interesting.
I don't know whether we've covered all the stories that we really... They're all the same, aren't they?
Well, the Telegraph. There's more.
This one says obese patients are to be sent to the back of surgery queue.
Right.
Hopefully this queue is up some steps as well, so they'll be thin when they get to the top of it. So this is reforms announced by Keir Starmer that mean patients will only be given a date for an operation if they've been assessed as fit to proceed. So this is prehabilitation. So they try and get people fit for their operations before.
Prehabilitation, I like that.
This shows Starmer's strength as a bureaucrat. So he can actually get some of the fiddly details done. This sounds like a great idea. Unfortunately, he's terrible at the bigger messages, the vision.
Do you think it's a great idea, joking aside, if people are denied access and services because of their lifestyle choices?
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely
I don't know, it's kind of...
Absolutely, 100% not. Definitely
smoking, heart attack,
making bad choices are part of being British. And there's lots of people watching this who've made those bad choices. No, look, the pressure, the fears and so on of an operation are huge. People are... if you're going to deal with addiction, then there's lots of different ways of looking at it, and this is not it. Not just before an operation when people are frightened and so on, to say, now you've got to stop smoking or whatever, drinking or whatever. People have loads of different habits.
Addiction,
and there's loads of different ways of looking at addiction.
Is resolving itself. Like in America, the deaths from fentanyl and drugs like that, opiates, they're declining because all the people who would take opiates are dying.
Oh, well, what a lot of goodies we have now. What a load of nicey. No,
but also, Kerry,
have some fun in life.
They don't have a socialised healthcare system, do they, in America? You've got to look after yourself. The problem with the NHS is that it was predicated on a public who did smoke, to be fair. Yeah. But they did not, generally speaking, get up into the, 20, 30 stone obesity bracket. And
have you ever... Look, if you dieted, I mean, if you diet, you'll notice a difference straight away. Right? If someone with 5 chins diets, they'll diet for a year and then one of their chins might have gone. It's depressing as hell.
Kerry, do you want to do the Daily Star? You've got about 30 seconds to cover this.
Yeah, why not? 23 lucky boozers holed up in Britain's highest pub for... This is great. They're basically the highest pub in the country, and they were snowed in, and they were forced to drink for 3 days.
Drink our way out.
Something that happened to me, by the way, years ago in Falkland Islands, and we were stuck on a mountain and we got snowed in, and fortunately, I'd had a good show, because we all know these comedians being stuck with the audience for 3 days as well.
Like the fear of doing the cruises. That's the front pages done. Coming up, Labour's cunning schemes. No, that was last night's. Never mind. We've got some great stories coming up for you after the break. See you in a couple of minutes.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Maria, potholes, the bane of everybody that uses a road, whether you're a car driver or a cyclist. As a cyclist, are even worse. How have we got into this situation where our roads are in such a bad state?
Well, part of it is to do with actually our climate. In somewhere like, say, Sweden, like the snow will fall on the ground, it will stay there for months. Whereas here we've got what's called a freeze-thaw climate, where the water comes down, then we might have a cold snap and it freezes, and the water within the pothole will then expand and make the pothole bigger. Then we might have a mild spell, and then that process repeats. So, we do actually need extra funding to acknowledge the fact that, we just live in a climate where we're sort of particularly vulnerable to potholes.
Why? I mean, the fact that this happens, these weather conditions happen, is no great surprise to anybody. Why has the problem been ignored for so long?
I think what's happened is we've had short-term funding. So it's like, oh, there's a pothole, let's patch it up. Oh, there's another one, let's patch it up. But the patches aren't actually really that strong, so then they break down again. So, really what we need is to have roads completely resurfaced, and then they'll just be pothole-free for a very long time. And that really is how funding should be. That's the direction funding should go in, as opposed to just sort of dribs and drabs here and there.
Do you think this government are going to be good for the motorist, or is there indeed a war on the motorist still?
The different parties come in and they've all got different policies that they wheel out, then they cancel the policies, and then there's so much lack of transparency. Like, for example, with the pothole issue, sometimes the government, whichever government is in office, will do some big showboating about how they're going to give X amount of potholes, and you still think that sounds really good.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Tonight I am joined by Leo Kearse and Kerry Marks. We're inside the newspapers now. Leo, you're hot, then you're cold. You're yes, then you're no. You're a bloody hero, but we don't need your dough. Here we are.
So Nigel Farage says reform can raise the money it needs without Elon Musk. So he said he would not accept a donation from Elon Musk, the world's richest man, if it came with conditions that included support for Tommy Robinson, who's described here as a far-right extremist. But we hear that a lot, and it can mean a lot of different things. So Elon Musk recently was reportedly planning to donate as much as $100 million to Reform UK, and now that might not be going to them because Elon Musk has tweeted saying that Farage needs to be replaced with someone else, possibly Rupert Lowe, another Reform MP, who does say, he's almost like the Reform attack dog. But I think, Musk needs to understand that how English or British politics works is, you can't go in there all guns blazing. You've got to be polite about it.
You cannot just buy parties with ready cash. And as our very own Nick Dixon said the other day, Rupert Lowe did make a very sound and he steered his path through the minefield very carefully, talking about Robinson and so on. I think it's interesting saying far-right extremists. I read a thing the other day that said, is there actually a proper textbook definition of a far-right extremist? Apparently, in most academic circles, it involves you having some desire to compromise or mitigate democracy itself.
Right.
You want to actually move to fascism. You want to move to a single... And there is zero indication that Tommy Robinson has any interest in overthrowing democracy. In fact, if anything, he would probably say, let's have a referendum on the issues and I will clean it, So I think that sounds outrageous. But equally, you're right, Farage has probably demonstrated he's got a pretty good radar on these things about how to create consensus.
And things like that. And also, he's got 176,000 members now, so that's a lot of money coming in. That's more than the Tories. I think it's more than any other party.
Kerry?
To be fair, the context of far-right here is meaning racist, right? It's not meaning politically or economically far-right. The part I find amusing about this, the idea that...
Tommy Robinson hasn't been,
No, I'm saying how they mean it.
I don't think he's been racist.
I'm saying how they mean it, but in that context, rather than being a politically far-right and so on. Or anyway, it's irrelevant. The idea that reform can raise the money it needs without it doesn't need Musk is so insane. This only happened, it was a few weeks back that Musk offered his 100 million. You know, reformers existed before that and believed they could get into power without that. This is just something that's come along, may work out, may not work out, hasn't really made a whole lot of difference right now. And I think it's right that Farage has distanced himself, whatever stance you have on Tommy Robinson. I think right now, and I think also you're absolutely right, the rhetoric of America is very different to the rhetoric over here, and Farage recognises that. And I think this has done him good for him. It just shows that he's in a respectable position. He has the integrity to say, I'm not going to go with that, even though it would benefit me by 100 million.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think it's shown Farage in a good light in that respect. He's his own man. He's got some backbone. And also, he's probably made the right call generally, which is that it would alienate as many voters as it would bring in. There would be an awful lot of people inclined to vote for reform for the programme, but not wanting to be Musk's puppets. But it's also the only question is, has there been any back-channel discussion to that effect? Has Musk gone, I'll tell you what I'll do, I will make do it, and then you can stand up to me?
Do you think so? Do you know what?
I don't know.
If that turned out to be the case, that would be absolutely amazing. Starmer's going to be seeing him soon anyway, so I'm sure they'll have a chance to chat it out.
I absolutely agree with you on the whole, and that is despite the fact that I do think, that the other chap is arguably, got the better of the rhetoric at the moment.
How do you mean?
Rupert Lowe.
Rupert Lowe, yes.
Rupert Lowe's Twitter game, is extremely strong, actually. Sure. He posts sort of long, almost thoughtful essays.
Yeah.
And
he's a real conviction politician. He says about it, he wants to fix Britain to leave it to his kids, which is, I think how a lot of people feel.
The only irony is, if Farage is looking for somebody to sort of start to get themselves into, the fly half position, they should be a bit younger than Farage, whereas actually I think he's older, if anything, isn't he? He certainly is the same generation, and really you do want to have somebody who comes along and makes it, as Farage said, look a bit cool.
But even with that, I would have liked to have seen the Prime Minister today recognise when he's making all this about Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk that Farage has taken this position. Yeah. It made his comments today entirely inappropriate and, unconnected with what's going on around him.
Absolutely. Now we have a look at the Mail. Kerry, no sign of grooming gang deportation data, but that could well be because there isn't any.
Home Office refuses to release grooming gang deportation data despite backlash over scandal blighting Britain. Why? Why do they refuse? We don't actually get a reason here. They just simply, no, we're not going to. This story isn't going to stop, and they need to start facing it. In fact, I think there not only needs to be an inquiry, but there needs to be an inquiry into why there isn't an inquiry. Yeah. What is actually going on? People come here for opportunities, and if they blow it, then, if you go to a party, if you go to my house, if you go to a disco, if you go to disco's a bit old, if you go to a club, if you go to a swimming pool, and you behave in a way that's inappropriate, you get thrown out. That's the norm, right? That's how we expect it. So this story centres around, I'm going to try this, Charlie Abdul Rauf, I believe, the ringleader of the Rochdale paedophile ring, who was basically given a 6-year sentence and did half of his sentence and was then supposed to be sent back to Pakistan, but Pakistan refused him. I mean, this is a guy who's left the country because it's not good enough for him, and now the country isn't good enough for him. Right?
Yeah, very true. Well, maybe we could drop him off halfway in the Arabian Gulf.
Well, maybe we can drop him outside the country and send him in a dinghy. See how they like it.
More serious point is that if countries, I think they are saying this, but if countries demonstrate this as a precedent, then we say, well, no more visas for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
this
that's
is pure weakness on the part of the British government, because we're not saying to other countries, oh, we're going to put trade tariffs, or we're going to stop any more visas, or stop any more, which we should be looking at anyway, given the issues that we've had. And instead, these grooming gang members, a lot of them will be coming to the end of their sentences now, so they're going to be released back into the communities they came from, which is absolutely deplorable. And as for the data not being there, this is what they say about the arrest data.
Turns out it is.
We don't record it. We can look at the mugshots, can't we? You know what I mean?
AI would sweep through that lot in 5 minutes flat. I think it's interesting that they refer to the rape gangs as grooming gangs, grooming obviously being something that goes on in a vet. And I think another thing that goes on in the vet would be an absolutely spot-on cure. Snip, snip, scissors go.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that Everton window moved over there. Hang on here. The tragic yet defiant anniversary now, Je suis Charlie, is 10 years after. We'll be coming up to that after the current break that we're coming into. Thank you very much. See you shortly.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Turning icy out there as temperatures fall away sharply. Some places continuing to see some snow showers as well. Low pressure clearing away out into the North Sea. That's what brought all the snow over the weekends. But behind it, the air is still coming down from the Arctic. Snow showers across northern Scotland. A mixture of rain, sleet and snow. Hail showers for Northern Ireland, Wales and southwest England. But any kind of shower could turn things quite icy as we see those temperatures falling down below freezing, -1, -2, even in towns and cities, rural spots below. Across parts of Scotland, well below, -6, -8 perhaps, across parts of southwest Scotland. In northern Scotland, maybe not quite as cold because here it'll be windy still and plenty more snow showers coming in here also. So again, accumulations likely across parts of northern Scotland. We could also see a covering through the night and in the morning across parts of Northern Ireland. More of a mixture, again, close to coast of rain and sleet, but certainly across parts of Wales, southwest England, some places waking up to more snow. And as I said, even if those showers are of rain, it could well turn things very icy for the morning commute. So just be aware of that first thing in the morning. Plenty more showers to come through the day across North Wales, northwest England, Northern Ireland. The showers on and off in the southwest too, and more snow showers in northern Scotland. Much of eastern England, southern England, largely dry, fine and sunny. Not as windy as today, but still cold. Temperatures only 2 or 3 degrees across the north. 6 or 7 further south. A hard frost on Tuesday night. And then on Wednesday, well, many places dry, fine and bright. But down to the south, we need to keep our eyes on this. It's not a guarantee, but if this wet weather hits the colder conditions across southern parts of England, we could see some further significant snowfall. One to watch at this stage. Met Office warnings and all the Environmental Agency flood warnings are on the websites.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. A quick roundup of the front pages for the late arrivals. The Daily Telegraph have Starmer calling for grooming probe. He says those people are far right. The Guardian, PM condemns Musk for lies and misinformation on abuse cases. The Daily Express, Starmer out of touch on the rape gang scandal. The NHS will send an extra 2.5 million patients to private hospitals in urgent attempt to cut waiting lists. The Metro, X Factor spat hits Starmer. And finally, the Daily Star. Do you want some ice with that? The 3-night lock-in in Britain's highest pub. Back to the Telegraph, then, for more reassuring news on the assimilation front, Leo.
Oh, my God. So teach children to identify as Muslim instead of British, says frontrunner for Islamic Body. This is Wajid Akhtar, who's standing to be the General Secretary of the Muslim Council of Britain, who I know are fans of the show and probably watching right now.
Tick.
He's also condemned New Year celebrations as pagan. Oh, imagine having a pagan ritual in a country like Britain that used to be pagan.
Certainly quite pagan in Cologne a few years ago, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You'd think he'd be supporting it. But he also called being Muslim an act of revolutionary defiance at odds with the prevailing culture. Doesn't really sound like somebody who's eager to integrate with his host culture. It's
absolute to weave together.
Yeah, it's kind of disgusting. He says celebrating New Year is the first step on a slippery slope to what, February? I mean, what is he
It often
about?
is the first step on a slippery slope, depending on the weather.
this really blows out of the water, this sort of left-wing dream of multiculturalism where, you know, people come to the UK and they integrate and everybody gets along swimmingly. This is somebody who's running to be the head of the representative body for Muslims in the UK, and he's saying, no, don't integrate. Be Muslim first. If you know, you should be a revolutionary, defiant, at odds with the prevailing culture. It's like, are you... What on earth? How is this good for Britain?
It has to be said that he is only saying out loud what is like the obvious truth in front of our eyes. In any major British city centre, you see Muslims obviously maintaining their Muslim identity, first and foremost, above and beyond their British identity, whatever that might be. And to an alarming extent now, we're not sure what British identity might look like anymore.
Yeah. To an extent, it's nice that people can have their identity and they can enjoy their identity, spread it around and so on. But this is an overlap of identity, which is where the problems are coming from. But when he's saying, you're mentioning the odds with the prevailing culture and so on, that's what the people who are being accused of being far right are saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's saying, so basically you've got people on the right who are saying there's a culture that doesn't mix. And everyone's saying that's far right, you can't say that. And then you have a leader of the Muslim community saying our culture doesn't mix, and that's a good thing. And we're going, well, but that's what we're told we can't say, you know?
It's a funny thing. I mean, I know everyone realises that Christianity has been largely denatured now to such an extent that it hardly sort of justifies the name of religion at all. But there was a famous saying, I think it's in the Bible, or maybe it's possibly just sort of apocryphal, of render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. The idea being that, you know, the city that you live in, the state that you live under, the regime, you obey their laws. You accept that you live in a secular society, and then you keep your religion and your faith for a separate period in time.
Yes, you integrate with them. You don't expect them to integrate and change their culture for you.
No, that's right, yeah.
But this even gets down to that New Year is wrong to celebrate because it's mixed gender.
Yeah.
So, and I thought this was just about prayers and so on, but no, this is like even celebrations, and a British celebration, you know, worldwide celebration should be separated genders. And then what we have is the other candidate, Mohammed Adris. It turns out to be. This is the other possibility.
He's the hardliner.
He's even more hardliner. Yeah. He said the Iranian Revolution when the great leader Ayatollah. Basically, he's a fan of the Ayatollah and so on. It's so what's really going on here? But also this guy, actor. He's not an actor, but that's his name. Is the main candidate has said that the people think the Western world is cool, whether through the examples of Captain America, Elon Musk, and LeBron James. What's he even talking about? How many British people are into Captain America, for heaven's sake?
Has he not heard of Captain Birdseye? That's who it should be.
That's much more us. That's much more who we see ourselves.
Now, Leo, as a 59-year-old man, I could have told you this was coming, but here we are. The free prescriptions are going to be tugged away from me.
Yeah, always just out of reach. So Labour opens door to scrapping free prescriptions for over 60s. So Labour ministers have failed to rule out making the change which could raise more than £1 billion for the NHS over 5 years. For perspective, the NHS budget is £192 billion a year. So £1 billion over 5 years shows that it's clearly not for the money, but to kill old people. This is to kill old people because they're the only people still voting Tory. So Labour want to kill them off and import lots of people who will vote Labour because people have been voting the wrong way, according to Labour. So, you know, this is how democracy works now. If people don't vote the right way, you don't get a new government. What you do is you bring people in who vote the right way.
Bertolt Brecht, dissolve the electorate and find a new one. Yeah, it's a theme, isn't it, with this government? It's not a one-off.
Yes.
Senicide, some people are calling it, the murder of the elderly. And to be fair, if you're 60... I think they're just pushing it back to the state pension age, so you're not getting prescriptions before you're available to get a state pension.
I don't care, Simon. I feel the same as when you first started this, actually. I've got, 1 year, 3 months to go. It looks like the free bus pass is probably going to go by then as well. All my perks that I've been... And do you know what? I really think this is the difference with all the advantages or all the benefits we give out to people in the country. For the older generation, they're the best perks there are because everyone who doesn't die early gets those perks, right? That's for all of us when we reach a certain age. And even then, you know, there are good arguments for this, actually. There are arguments to take it away and wait, but I don't accept them. just no, find another way.
I have to say, though, at 59, I am fairly healthy, but I have noticed I find myself in the chemist more often. You do start noticing that in your late 50s.
And you were looking for the fish and chip shop.
And you keep thinking it's Thursday. Now, the sad story which I told earlier, Je suis Charlie, once again, a sad yet defiant anniversary 10 years after in The Guardian, Kerry.
Yes, Charlie Hebdo marks 10 years after the terror attack with a special issue. I always see it as a special issue in The Guardian. I thought they were putting out... Oh, no, sorry, no, they're putting out a special issue.
They are putting out a special issue, yeah.
Yeah, OK.
It's probably got the cartoon of Mohammed on the cover, I should imagine.
I know they had a special issue. I read this story. They had a special issue immediately after the murder, and their average sort of weekly sales is about 50,000 a week, and they sold, I think, 8 million or something. Right. It was an unbelievably huge thing.
Yes.
I suppose there is a
But to a large extent, it feels like the story, something massive happened, and seemed to kind of blow over in a way that it really shouldn't have done, because and we're talking right now in this country about blasphemy laws and Islamophobic laws and so on, which in the light of this, we should have been doubling down on the absolute necessity of free speech.
I mean, some
and being
people would say
allowed to go on.
Salman Rushdie was the first canary in the coal mine, and that was back in the early 90s, you know.
Yes.
Maybe even late 80s, can't remember.
But I think then there was, and I don't think it was a good argument, there was someone criticising his own culture and a reaction from his culture to his culture. This comes from a European culture, and it's... I know sometimes on this programme it's hard, we're not always being as we would be on stage being funny, but we are comedians, and to me it's a large part of my identity, and nothing, absolutely nothing is above mockery, and anything that considers itself to be above mockery is dangerous. And that's
except me in my own home. That's all. That's the only
in your own home, and that's why I don't visit you.
In the bosom of my family.
Because I want to make fun of you in your home.
Not again. Shocking news in the Mail now, Leo, as Derbyshire police quit X, and now how will we find out whether we can take our dogs for a walk or not?
So, a police force quits Elon Musk's X, or Twitter, over the quantity and quality of responses it receives as it becomes the latest organisation to leave the billionaire's site. So Derbyshire police has decided to step back from using Twitter, or X, to communicate with people other than in major incident circumstances because of abuse from internet trolls. Oh, boo-hoo! Do you not have armour for that? For God's sake, you're police. Also, you're police. You shouldn't be on social media anyway. You're not a teenage girl. Stop. You know what I mean? Go and solve some crimes.
Derbyshire police were the ones they were the most notorious during the pandemic for attacking dog walkers with drones. They had them up on the moors.
Really?
They've got 1 million... Yeah, it was very famous. There was famous footage of them, them driving past in Range Rovers going, "Get off the moors!" You know, people are surrounded by with the cleanest, least virusy air.
They had time for that. That's incredible.
They've got 1 million followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
Which suggests to me those are all pandemic followers, none of whom are very interested, who just wanted to see the latest. And so what they've probably noticed is they've got not so much trolling as they used to get, and they're probably missing it.
Well, they've gone over to Blue Sky with all the defund the police people now, and So...
Very quickly with this one, Kerry, I yield to no man in my appreciation of the strength of classical music, but I think this might be optimistic.
Yes, this might be going a little bit too far with it. Probably something also the police picked up on Blue Sky, but play classical music to deter drug thugs, police tell residents. So this basically in a London suburb where people are experiencing, it's in St John's Wood, high levels of crime, and the police have written them to say that playing classical music works, which, of course, there was experiments where classical music does work in McDonald's or in a shopping centre, right? But that's not quite the same as in... It's also
it works in opera houses. I went to opera. It wasn't a single mugging.
Really?
At least not in the audience.
Water features also work in towns. They calm people down, but it's not the same as having a water feature in your house. Someone will come in and steal your water feature. And if you hear classical music coming from a house, you think they're rich. You don't think. You think there's money in there.
Up to the drug dealer with a cart.
Yes.
Well, there it is. Still to come, the Pope is two fat ladies, but he doesn't like the nuns with vinegar faces. Those are not new lyrics to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. It's a true story. It's all coming up on Headliners, only on GB News.
looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're on the hunt for some winter sun, I'm afraid it's often going to be cloudy, also with some rain. Largely dry across central areas, but it is going to be windy at times. Some cloud and rain moving into parts of Madeira and Lisbon, though largely dry across Tenerife and largely dry across central areas of the Mediterranean too. But as we move further east, more cloud for parts of Italy and also Greece, and this could be thick enough to produce some rain at times. More in the way of sunshine towards the end of the week, and temperatures widely in the mid to high teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This is a topic very close to my heart. I have become fully convinced that social media, smartphones are one of the primary causes of mental health problems in children and many other serious problems beside. Lots of governments are starting to talk about this, but the Australians are well ahead in their use of legislation. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I've got 3 young children and I'm really concerned about... I mean, they're too young to be on social media, but I'm really concerned about what lies ahead for them. I'm not sure I support what Australia's doing, not because I don't think it's a good idea to ensure that age verification is right. I'm just not sure that the age 16 is appropriate. But that's progress. If we effectively, as I do, accept the point that we need some sort of control, then we can move to a proper debate about whether that's 16, 14, 13, whatever it may be. And, of course, there are age restrictions on things like Facebook. I think, from memory, it is 13.
Yes, but it's a tick box.
But it's a tick box, so all you can do is you can just knock. If you're 11 years old, you can just predate your date of birth by 2 years, and you can get on. I think what Australia is proposing is interesting because it will stop young people, maybe without their parents' knowledge, short-circuiting the system because they're going to be asking for proper age verification and ID. That's definitely something we should do in the UK because it's enforced in the existing law. Query, is 16 the right age, Miriam?
I completely agree with it. It's something I actually said should have been done before. And I think what is good about it is that for a long time, a lot of governments have been saying that the actual social media companies should take more responsibility, but they're not going to because it hurts their bottom line. The most voracious users are younger users. So they will pledge that, oh, I'll put the tick box in, but the kid is the one who's going to actually tick the box. So doing something like this is saying that, OK, we will put in legislation that damages your bottom line. And I think it will force the hand because they've said it's only 12 months and they will reevaluate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support. It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back. So we have one last section, generally speaking, the quirkier of the programme. Leo, the Daily Mail, gays in America demand the right to bear arms along with bare legs and bare midriffs.
Yeah, so LGBTQ people...
Come on, that deserves a bit of a chortle.
I don't get it.
The right to bear arms and bare legs and bare midriffs.
Because they're
naked.
Wearing hot pants.
They're in the disco. Yeah.
You never said they were in a disco.
Oh, I suppose
we didn't know that. Give us the full picture.
That joke was based on outmoded stereotypes. You need to be sent on diversity training.
It's been deemed condemned.
So this is LGBTQ people in America are revealing the outrageous reason they're buying guns. So across the region, across the nation, they're driven by fears of escalating political rhetoric, targeted legislation, and what many describe as the spectre of persecution. But I think, David Koresh in the Waco siege showed you can
can't shoot your way out of persecution by the American state, so the guns won't do you any good. And also, I mean, they got this person, a 24-year-old trans woman from Philadelphia named Amy, previously Brian. The decision to purchase her first firearm came after months of unease. So she got this. She's worried about the ban on gender-affirming care for minors. You're 24 years old. It's not going to, and also, they want to protect kids, and you think it's targeted at you. That's kind of weird. And also,
people, if they aren't allowed to adopt children, they like to adopt persecution complexes from other people. It's extraordinary.
Absolutely. And if you look at the history of persecution, look at the Pulse nightclub shooting. That was a targeted killing of gay people. It wasn't by the American state, it wasn't by far-right people, it wasn't by Christians or anything like that, it was by the Islamic State in the Pulse nightclub in 2016 in Florida, and 49 gay people were killed.
The Muslim Council of Britain getting a late goal there, thinking that this woman's going to pass them by.
This is the Pride movement taking another turn, a rather unexpected one. And it largely seems to be revolving around trans rather than the whole LGBTQ thing, which I think we're heading towards our first cis-trans world war as this builds up. We're constantly told suicide rates in the trans community is high. I'm not sure giving them guns is the right answer, really.
It's dangerous because you've got the mental stability of a woman with the aggression of a man.
I mean, you're absolutely... it's a joke, but you're absolutely right, Kerry. That a huge number of the deaths, they always talk about how many firearms deaths, a huge number of those are suicides, right?
Yes, absolutely.
In America.
There's an interesting statistic here which comes from some gun trainer, and he's saying 85% of suicides attempted with firearms lead to death.
Yeah, succeed.
What a failure of 15%. Like,
Take off an eyebrow.
You've got a gun and you miss.
Yeah. No, I remember there's a guy who did it and shot his face off. It was a horrific case.
Yeah.
And he lived.
Yeah.
Without a face.
Yeah.
For a while.
And he couldn't complain.
Yeah, he did.
He couldn't even say, I feel stupid.
Loss
he had
of
no
face,
mouth to say
literally.
it with. So, yeah.
Leo, the story from the Vatican, which I trailed earlier, it's not the main issue at stake, but I do just want to emphasise the Pope is two fat ladies. That's really pleased me.
That's a great joke. He's 88.
He is 88.
No homophobia there at all.
No.
Unlike with the Pope, who is... So Pope Francis calls out nuns with vinegar faces. The pontiff tells sisters to be more friendly and avoid gossip. So he shouted this from the passenger window of a white van. Apparently. Why don't you smiling?
Cheer up, darling. Might never happen.
Don't gossip. It's not something that helps to attract people. I don't think nuns are really hell-bent on attracting people, to be honest. That's why they became nuns.
There was a study done into the positive psychology, what makes people happy rather than just what stops you being sad. And they found that nuns had a lot of the answers traditionally.
Is that right?
But some of them go into the convent already optimistic and they say that way, and others are a little bit scoldy. But yeah, generally speaking, nuns live quite a long time and avoid chronic illnesses because they are generally quite, So he's picking the fight with the wrong people. Really.
Yes, he is. Yeah. They should be telling him to shut up.
I could suggest who we could pick a fight with, but we got him through past the Muslim Council. So we've got one last story over in DC. Kamala Harris has finally broken through a glass ceiling, unfortunately from above. She's announced the election of Donald Trump. I think that's with you, isn't it? Or is it with
no, that's right. Yeah. Sorry, it's the transfer of power that happens in... it's a formality, and it's where the outgoing leader gets to embarrass themselves by having to read out the votes by which they were thrown
Kamala
out.
Harris has me.
I mean, it's a rigmarole. Sorry.
4, 3, 2, 1. There it is.
Oh.
Bad news for Kamala. She didn't get the grace she deserved. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. Daily Telegraph. Starmer calls for grooming probe. Starmer calls grooming probe far right. Oh, whatever. Something along that line. The Guardian. PM condemns Musk for lies and information on abuse cases. The Daily Express. Starmer is out of touch on the rape gang scandal. We agree. The NHS will send an extra 2.5 million patients to private hospitals in an urgent attempt to cut waiting lists. The Metro X Factor spat hits Starmer. And finally, the Daily Star. You want some ice with that? Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Leo and Kerry. Cressida Wetton will be here tomorrow with Leo and Jonathan Kogan. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you very much for your company. Good night.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Weather and flood warnings remain in place. The wintry weather will continue for most of this week. Further snow showers in places tonight. If you don't get the snow showers, then it's going to be cold and frosty and potentially icy. The low pressure system that brought all the snow over the weekend is now heading out into the North Sea, taking its wet weather with it. But behind it, the wind's coming down from the north, bringing snow showers across northern Scotland. A mixture of rain, sleet and snow showers for Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest. You could easily get a few more centimetres of snow in places here, but it's going to be quite patchy. Certainly close to the coast, mostly rain, but with temperatures tumbling, any showers could lead to things being very icy through the night and first thing on Tuesday morning. So a frosty old start for many central and eastern parts. Dry, fine and sunny starts, and many places will stay that way through the day. But more snow showers will continue to come in across northern Scotland. Again, perhaps rain close to coast, but inland and certainly over any hills, there'll be more snow building up. Wintry mix across Northern Ireland, sleet, hail, some snow showers here. Same goes for Wales. Again, you could wake up to a covering a further few centimetres in places. Showers into the southwest, again, potentially making things very slippery on those roads and pavements. During the day, we'll continue to see some showers into the west, some getting into northwest England. Again, chiefly of rain at low levels here, but many eastern and southern parts dry, fine and sunny. Still a cold wind blowing, but not quite as strong, quite as bitter as the winds have been today. But temperatures are still going to struggle below average, even in the sunny spell. 6 or 7 across the south at best. Many places not much above freezing. Another hard frost Tuesday night into Wednesday. And then for Wednesday, we need to keep our eyes on this weather system coming up from the south. Some uncertainty about how far north it gets, but if it hits the colder air, it could bring some significant snow across parts of the south. This is on Wednesday. Stay updated to the forecast.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£50,000 in tax-free cash is like having over £4,000 each month to play with for a whole year. And it could be yours in the biggest Great British giveaway so far. That could be a holiday each month, your mortgage covered, or just the ability to send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 632.